Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori, and once again I am joined by a very special guest today, and you probably have seen him around my channel once or twice before, and that is my very handsome, very special husband, Ben.
Hey.
About a week and a half ago, Ben and I did a video that was called Best First Lines, where we gave star ratings to a whole bunch of really awesome and fairly famous fantasy books. Now, we are back because apparently y'all really liked that, so we're gonna do it again. But this time, we're gonna be working our way through a stack of 10 self or indie published fantasy books. We're gonna be giving each first line a rating between 1 star and 5 star, 1 being it was awful, which none of these are going to get, and 5, which means that we cannot wait to get into this book. It is so good. A quick disclaimer from us is that no matter what star rating these first lines get, that in absolutely no way, shape, or form reflects what we think of the book as a whole or the author who wrote it. If you haven't already gotten your hands on these amazing indie and self-pub sci-fi and fantasy books, please go check out those links in the description and show these authors some love. The first book we are going to be rating is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. Now this book is on almost everyone's self-pub fantasy favorites list. I have not read it yet, Ben has not read it yet, so I'm very curious to see what this first line looks like. So what I know about this book is that there is a mother and son duo who are elite warriors, and they are dragged out of a time of peace into war sooner than they anticipated. It was a harrowing climb to the high school. That's not the first thing I would expect to read.
There's a few words that stand out, like harrowing, and the fact that the high school is up a climb. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got to climb to get to it, and it's a harrowing climb.
But it's also a high school.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea what I'm going to find after that first line.
This sounds like an interesting high school.
I'm gonna give that one a 4 star because it's in a fantasy book. Because in any other genre, I feel like that would be less impactful, but because it's so unexpected, immediately makes me question everything that's happening.
It seems like a really simple line at first, but the more it's sitting with me, the more I'm thinking I want to give it a 4 star too.
Next up is Voice of War by Zach Argyle. This book I have just recently read. You can check out my full video review of it. I will put it in the cards up at the top of the video. In the beginning of this book, we meet Chris Valerian, who is a threadlight user, somebody who can use magic in this world. He is a high general, he is a war hero, and his wife is days away from giving birth to their first child. Now, things go awry when Chris is given a mission to infiltrate a secret organization that turns out to be much deadlier than he anticipated. Ben, would you do the honors?
Why, I'd be glad to. A priest, dressed in ritual whites, placed a glove over each of his hands and reached out to the child on the altar. Whoa.
I loved that first line. I have read this book, obviously, and that first line had me immediately.
Well, immediately, like, the intensity is in the air.
Yeah.
There's a child on an altar.
Because you don't know why.
Yeah, immediately your eyebrows are up. What's going to happen? I care. I want to give it a 4.5 for that.
I'm going to give it a 5 star. For me, it's very subjective, especially because I'm a mom, so anything to do with children is immediately going to pull me into the story very, very quickly. Mama Bear is out. Next up, we have The Legend of Tal, Book 1, A King's Bargain by J.D.L. Russell, and if I said that wrong, please correct me in the comments. On the back of the book, it says, Name of the Wind meets The Witcher in A King's Bargain, an intertwining sword and sorcery adventurer and coming-of-age tale. That's an incredible combination, and I don't even know what to do with that in my head, but it sounds very intriguing to me. I'm very excited to read this book. Tal Herrenfell is more lie than legend.
I kind of like that because it sets up immediately a distrust. Because what are you going to hear about him? Is it the legend? Because
is it real? Is
we've
it
just
fake?
been told that that's not true.
So is
I
this
like
book even real?
I like the amount of doubt that sets up in the reader immediately.
When you have a book that's called something like Legend of Tal, you're waiting for this kind of heroic quest story, I feel like. That's kind of the initial vibe. And then you open the front cover and we suddenly question everything, which is, in my opinion, a really smart way to do it.
I've decided I want to give this one a 5 star.
Wow.
Yep.
Is that your first 5-star? No, you gave
I gave
Silence.
I gave
stars.
Empire of Silence's
Light.
Light a 5-star.
5 stars.
Yeah.
Well, lauded company. I really like it, and I really like what it evokes and how it works opposite the title of the book. I think is really, really smart.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's just such a sucker punch.
Yeah.
That
I think I'm going to give it a solid 4 because I do really like that immediate flip right off the title of the book. Okay, the next book we have is the beautiful A Touch of Light by Tiago Abdallah. I know, this cover, Ben and I have been talking about it all week.
I sat for a while and tried to figure out why the cover was so visually appealing. It's really cool.
It's beautiful. All right. Really quick blurb from the back of the book says, the world of Avarin is tearing itself apart. The domain worships life, its leaders lead eternal lives, and death is a shame that must not be mourned. But for the clans to the south, death is all that keeps the earth alive. How far would you go to resurrect someone you love? Would you change who you are to show you belong?
Father's officers shuffled around the map on the council room table, pointing out routes and offering suggestions, each one more certain than the last about the location of the missing airship. I imagine they're in the air, but that's not necessarily the case.
And I like books that catch me unawares. I wasn't expecting an airship, and that totally changes, like, oh, there's an airship, so the world shifts in my head immediately.
You're in a world, you don't know much about it, but it is a world with airships.
Yeah.
That's
which
cool.
Is cool. I would say, for me, this one's like a 3.5.
I want to give it a 4, and the one thing that pushes it into 4 range for me is just that it begins with the word fathers officers shuffled. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning something about the narrator and also something about the
while
people
he is
at the
talking
table.
about someone else.
Yeah, there's a lot that you learn just from this one sentence, and so.
All right, next up we have Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. Ein is on a mission from God, a god of death. Time is up for the Emperor of the 10 Kings, and it falls to a murdered 8-year-old boy to render the judgment of a god. Ein knows he can't do it alone, but the Empire is rife with heroes. Ein has 4 legendary heroes in mind, names from storybooks read to him by his father. Now he must find them and kill them so he can bring them back to fight the Reaper's War. If anyone loves Asian-inspired fantasy and is a fan of Motley Crue's, I can't tell you how much you should pick up this book. This is one that I have read and Ben is in the middle of reading, so we have both read the first line. Itami Cho woke to the screams of her own death.
I want to give it a 4.5.
I'm going to also give it a 4.5 because...
Yeah, that's good. That's a good first line.
That is a great first line. Especially, and it's, I'm removing my bias about the character.
Yeah, it's hard because I know
because you know her as a character
the whole rest
now.
of the story and everything else, and I'm trying to think just in terms of when I first read the line and didn't know anything else.
I love aggressive action openers. I really do. I love them. And so when I get that from a book, I'm very in it very quickly. So that was definitely a 4.5 star for me, I think. All right, next up we have Wistful Ascending by J.C.M. Byrne. This is a review copy that I received recently from him, and Ben has not read it. I have not read it. This book I know has a superhero kind of space opera vibe, which I'm very, very excited to read. I know that there's a lot of humor in it. So yeah, I'm super excited to read this one. I don't know that much about it other than what I just said.
Rohan or Rohan?
Rowan?
Rowan?
Rowan? Rohan?
Rohan's helmet whined with the heavy demand as he drew in a painful, choppy breath. I'm purposefully not reading on past the first sentence.
I know. This is what I will say right away about this is that the first sentence, while it by itself, I don't know, immediately like grabs me as hard as some of the other ones, I'm immediately tumbling forward into the next sentences because I'm like, I need more. I want more.
It's nice because it gives you enough so that you want to know more. Why is his breath painful and choppy?
Right.
For me, I want to give it I go 3.5.
I'm going to give this one a solid 3.5 because I feel like even though I want more from it, but it still does do what it's supposed to do, and it really pulls me into the next sentences because I'm like, ooh, I want more. What's going on? So 3.5 for me on that one. All right, next up we have The Traitors We Are by Michael Roberti. One of the main concepts in this book I'm very, very excited to read about, and that is that when you die, all of the things you have written disappear. Like, the writing disappears, which I think is just a fascinating concept, and I'm very excited to see what Michael does with it.
That's interesting, yeah.
The smoke from the morning's porridge was thin and white and wispy in the morning chill.
I want to say that the senses of taste and smell, especially,
are underrepresented.
They are underrepresented. And to get porridge
in the first line
in the
of the
first
book.
line, and I wasn't expecting that, but I smell porridge.
Yeah, I love, like, I'm not getting a character, I'm not getting, like, a ton of information about the story, which is tough, but I really like... Like,
well, the smoke is described.
We're taking time with some very small everyday details. Like, a lot of times in fantasy books, they start out and it's big and it's the world or a character or a, you know, villain or hero or whatever. But to start out a fantasy book just small everyday detail, I actually really, really like.
It's really cool. Almost want to give it a 5, but it's not.
Give it a 5-star for the porridge.
No. Oh, you know what's so cool? Like, we're spending 3 words on this: thin and white and wispy in the morning chill. Like, you can see it.
It's giving some heroism to a bowl of porridge. Yeah, I'm gonna give that a solid 4. All right, the next book that we are going to look at is A Drowned Kingdom by P.L. Stewart. Now, this book, all I know about it is that it is based loosely on the myths of Atlantis, and that the main protagonist goes through a lot of character growth in this book. I've been hearing some amazing things about it. I know that this book has a lot of really solid immersive world building from what I've been hearing. Again, Ben and I have not had the chance to read this yet, so we are going into it completely blind.
Ooh, this is good.
He hasn't even read it yet.
I stood there and wept.
You're gonna love that one.
Yeah,
Ben loves it. Ben loves it.
This is another 5-star for me.
Wow, look at all
it's
you
just
guys. You guys gotta just go down to the description and buy all these books after you watch our video.
I love simple, straightforward punch.
Well, and the other thing that's really cool about that is it speaks to something great and terrible, either for this character or in general, that has happened before we even come into the story. Like, there's something that drove him to this point where he is standing here and weeping. People
don't just stand there and weep for no reason.
I'll give it a 4. I'm gonna give it a 4-star. I like a little bit more detail, I think. Alright guys, 2 left. The next one we have is Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. I literally know almost nothing about this series intentionally because I really wanted to go into it blind. I know that Ryan Cahill has been a huge name in the self-pub industry this last year, and I am very excited to read his book. On the back of the book it says, in the remote villages of southern Eferia, still reeling from the tragic loss of his brother, Kalen Breyer prepares for the proving, a test of courage and skill that not all survive. But when 3 strangers arrive in the village of Milltown with a secret they are willing to die for, Kalen's world is ripped from under him and he is thrust headfirst into a war that has been raging for centuries. Beams of pale moonlight drifted through the forest canopy as Kalenvar pushed his foot against the Uruk's lifeless body, turning it over onto its back. I like...
That's cool.
The aftermath of battle beginnings, which I think speaks very heavily to my bias toward the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because almost all of them open on the aftermath of the battle, at least the ones that I have read. So one thing I really like, again, we're getting a lot of details here. I like pale moonlight, and then that really kind of delicate, like natural beauty, contrasted with the fact that we have death at our feet, you know, and that's kind of a really interesting way to bring us into the world, is like putting those two things together in the first sentence. So I think that's pretty awesome. And also the Uruk's lifeless body turning it over onto its back. So it's not being given
humanity.
Right. Which immediately is interesting. I'm going to give that one a 4-star too, I think, because I like the details, and I always have really liked that kind of hard and soft contrast between like this really beautiful pale moonlight, and then right away we have this like kind of inhuman death, you know.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too.
In the same sentence.
It's almost a 4 for me. I'm going to give it a 3.5.
3.5?
Yep.
All right. Last but certainly not least, we are going to be rating Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. Now, I am just going to say, you guys, I have to show you guys this. So I bought this book. I love the cover art. It is beautiful. I have been hearing incredible things about this book. Apparently, it is classic fantasy for a modern audience, and I have heard nothing but high praise for this book. I'm going to show you this hardcover. This is the naked hardcover of this book, and I just have to show it off because I have been staring at it since it came in the mail like 3 days ago, and I can't wait to get into this book. I'm very excited about it.
It was said the gods weep every time a dragon falls from the sky. I like that.
You like all the crying.
You're right.
Crying will get Ben every time. We're in a classic fantasy book that is going to remind us why we love the tropes we love. I think, if that makes sense. Like, that's what I'm expecting out of this novel, and that's what I'm, like, looking forward to. And I think that first line definitely sets the tone for that really well. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong, but you never know.
The way it's said, it almost strikes me as being archaic. But classic is a good way of thinking of it. It's really good.
Well, and it
I
definitely
appreciate that.
Kind of builds the scope right away, too. Like, in the first sentence we're talking, it's like the complete opposite from the bowl of porridge. We went from, like, you know, this very intimate daily life thing to this opener, which is just vast.
Yeah, it
like,
sets the tone.
We have gods and dragons.
This is a massive scale.
It's a massive classic fantasy scale. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is cool.
I really appreciate that opening. I want to give it a 4.5. It's very close to a 5.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 4.5 because it is really giving me a lot of, like, classic fantasy vibes, and I'm just very excited about that. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 because I can. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to know if you have read any of these books. Please say down in the comments what your experiences with them were. Also, if you are looking for a new read and any of these reads fit what you are excited about right now, please go down in the description box below and click that link and buy yourself a copy and support these incredible indie and self-pub authors, because honestly, these guys are a huge part of the future of this genre, and the more that I read of them, the more I am convinced of that, and the more I am just blown away by the incredible amount of talent that these fantasy authors have. So go support them. Go buy the books, and let us know down in the comments which one, if you haven't read any of them, which one you would be most excited to read. So Ben, besides the one you are currently reading, which is Never Die, which of these 10 books are you most excited to read?
I don't remember. What was the name of the porridge one?
The Traitors We Are by Michael Roberti.
I want to read that one, and I definitely want to read Dragon Mage.
I Stood There and Wept was a Drowned Kingdom, and that one has Atlantis in it.
Yeah. The ones that got 5 stars, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to go back and read those. And I want to read A Touch of Light, because that cover is tremendous.
I will be reading all of these books in the fairly near-ish future, hopefully, so keep an eye out on my channel for reviews on those, and keep up with me on Goodreads, also linked below if you want to see in real time what I am reading. So, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you are having a fabulous week. I hope your week is full of 5-star reads, and we will see you in the next video.